Welcome back, episode 23. I'm here with Brandon. Say hello, Brandon.
Hey, Chip, how's it going? It's been a little while.
It has been a little while. Brandon and I get backed up, and then we have a hard time deciding what we want to talk about because we sometimes have 3 or 4 or 5 things that have passed by us, and so we are.
Well, not only that, the timing, and this is really difficult. Just scheduling is just unbelievable. I mean, I think I'm considering getting a personal assistant just so we can find some time to do this.
Just so you can say you have a personal assistant, you mean?
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I want to apologize to anybody who got an invite to participate today who was never intending to see one. Google keeps changing the way that they do their Hangouts, and honestly, every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whenever Brandon and I do one of these, I go through the same process to set up the conference, and the buttons are different. And this time, I apparently invited everyone in my circles, and I almost invited the general public. However, at our next couple episodes, I am going to open it up. We are going to send a message to Sopam and all our friends, so that if you want to see it live and maybe participate, I think we'll have to make that happen. I know we've had a couple silent viewers in the past, which is cool. They can confirm that none of this is even the least bit scripted.
Yeah.
But I think a little more community involvement would be great.
Yeah,
so,
I totally agree. That's something that we can do for 2014. Hey, Chip, so tell me a little bit about some things you got going on. You briefly mentioned some stuff that you got going on. And so tell me a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, as everyone should remember, we ended the year last year with a little contest asking people to tell us about their New Year's resolutions and what they were thankful for. And the feedback we got from that is still, I think, some of the coolest stuff we've ever done. And one of the resolutions I had asked every practice to make, actually, one of the ones I asked everyone to make was to take a look at their pricing, which you and I discussed at our last episode, and that's been going great.
I addressed that immediately after we hung up. So.
Yeah, that was great. And I've had probably, it's not an exaggeration, probably 30, 40 emails through my blog and through, directly through this from people downloading the RVU calculator and so forth. And so that's been great. The other thing I asked people to do was to go to some meetings outside of your office, whether it's your local chapter AAP meeting, the NCE meeting, an ICD-10 training, and so forth. I really, really feel like people get so much from that, and I've never been to a conference where someone says, "Well, I didn't enjoy that." They always really like it. So I want to tell people about a couple meetings that I'm aware of because I'm going to be there. And these have been great. So they're first of all, the Pediatric Management Institute, which is Paul Ventieri's gig. He has 2 more meetings on the schedule: Rochester on March 22nd and Dallas on April 5th. You can go get the details at pediatricmanagementinstitute.com. He's also shooting for San Francisco and Vegas, I think, later on in the year. And I know, for example, in Rochester, it will be Rich Lander, Suzanne Madden, and myself. The 3 of us just happened to do Tampa. It's been going great. People email us even before.
Tell me about the feedback that you've been getting from the attendees.
Yeah, well, just at the last one. I mean, this has happened every time. No exaggeration. I'm not even at the airport yet. The day is done. I'm racing to the airport, and I've already got email from people saying that was so worth it. I expect to pay for my airfare, time out of the office, and everything by Monday. And so we're getting great feedback. The best feedback we've gotten is not the direct congratulatory stuff, but I've already seen, let me count, 2, 3 practices who are sending their second group of people to one of these seminars. So they came and they saw us.
What are the topics? I know that you can go to PMI and see the topics and everything, but just briefly, what do you guys cover?
We are covering. I'll tell you, for example, I ended up doing a bit on pediatric benchmarking and how to set your prices. Suzanne does a great piece on PCMH, as well as a piece on new payment models and what we have to look forward to in the next couple of years. And Dr. Lander covers
payment models, not from like how they're going to start paying us for services, or how creative pediatricians are getting to get paid for things.
Oh no, the former. So it's more about pay for performance programs. It's more about how the payers are going to be focusing more on quality and not on fee for service. And she describes the history and background of these programs and what some people are already doing in different states and how to prepare for them.
Okay,
And then there's the
awesome.
classic CPT coding stuff. Paul does a couple talks on how to market your practice. He does a talk about his KPIs. I'm not going to tell you what that acronym means. Go look at it. And then, it ends up being a jam-packed day. We also take the opportunity, like during lunch, we will sit with everybody and answer questions. So you get an ask the expert mode. And after each seminar, I've got 3, 4, 5 people who are emailing me after the seminar to follow up with stuff, and I think that's great. The other thing that I want to talk about.
You have another one in California, right? I heard you mention one in California. What's that one
exactly.
about?
So Nelson Branco from of SOPM fame has been saddled with setting up the Chapter 1 California Chapter 1 meeting every year, and he's in Tahoe on, let me see, I'm looking at my own screen right here, April 25th to April 27th. Now, Brandon, you'll like this, and I'll explain why in a second. But again, it's another meeting where I'm going to be giving a talk. I'm giving a talk on your practice in the internet, and it's the things that most people don't talk about. I'm going to talk about the dark side of the internet a little bit, and some things you can do to guard yourself against a couple of the dangers. Suzanne Madden is there to talk about, let me see, I'm going to get her title. She and I are sharing one. But Suzanne is doing another PCMH talk. Then she and I are doing a talk that I love doing, and it's effective strategies for recalling your patients and doing it within the context of the medical home. There's a whole host of clinical talks that weekend. But one of the highlights, Brandon, that I know you would love in particular, is that Wendy Sue Swanson, she's famous tweeter, I guess that's the
social media royalty.
Right, and she's giving her talk by Skype during the conference, and so that's the Seattle Baby Doc. A lot of people know her as that.
Mama.
So pardon me, I got it wrong. But if you go to, I'll put a link to it when we put this up, but if you go to my blog, you can see all this stuff. I would really love to see people there, and if you are, I guess we'll say if you're part of our congregation here, I would love it if you said hello. Brandon and I think it's great when someone comes up to us and says, oh, I saw your video, I heard your podcast or whatever. Yes, of course we love that. We're human beings. We like that kind of feedback. But more than anything, I just think it's awesome that people are interested in these topics. That to me is that's the best part.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean it's cool to get the feedback and stuff, but it's also like before I was like, oh cool, some people are listening, but as I mentioned to you earlier, it was just like, I mean it's awesome that people are using this information, and it's helpful, right? Because it's not just two guys talking, which that's kind of what we thought we were going to do at the beginning, but as it turns out, it's helping people out, and that's really what we wanted to do was to have to create value, not just simply have a show.
Yeah. That's the best part when someone says, oh, I made a change, or I did something different in my practice, and here's the payoff.
Awesome. I mean, that comment that you made, I implemented it, and it's done really well. And you're like, wow, what better way, to have a good day, I guess.
Well, let's talk about one of the things that we've gotten a lot of questions about. I know I've seen you've been asked a million questions about this online, but we've actually had some people specifically request a review of what I'll just call your credit card process. All right. So, Brandon, in 3 sentences, this is going to be a challenge. In 3 sentences, tell me if you can explain what you do with credit cards that makes you different from most pediatric practices.
I can do that in less than 3 sentences already. I just blew 1 sentence.
Yeah, that's
what do I do with credit cards? I store them. I keep them. Everybody that comes into our office, I'll just do a run-on sentence. No period.
Okay.
Everybody that comes into our office, or our office, has to leave a credit card on file with us.
Okay, so let me ask you first, how does it work? And that, I'm going to get to why, and I'm going to get to the objections and everything like that, but I just want to start with what is the technical process that you follow to do this? Because this is one place where people get hung up.
Well, I start with a little mantra, and I try to get them to fall in a deep, deep sleep. That's how it works. And then I say, hand me over your credit card, and then they hand it over. So that's what it's work. I do a little hypnosis.
Okay.
No. How does it work? Well, simple. We simply request. Not really request. It's not really a request. It's just a part of our patient agreement that you have to leave a credit card on file in order for us to provide services to you. And that goes for everybody that comes into the office, with exception, of course, of Medicaid.
And when you get these numbers, what do you do with them? How does it work? You don't post them in your office, on the bulletin board, right?
Oh, that's what you were getting at. Well, you were asking questions, Chip. All right, so we use a merchant. The people always ask me, who's the merchant, and I'm very wary of giving blanket endorsements to companies, because as soon as I say this is the company that we use, and then we find out that they did a terrible thing. So my thing is, go find your merchant, see who if you want to send me a private email, I'll tell you who we use. But there's plenty of companies out there, and the way that it works is that we have the way that our merchant works is like an online portal. We no longer have the little machine that sits there, next to on the desk. We have an online portal, so we go to the website of this vendor, and we purchase those little card swipers, and we attach those to the monitors, and we swipe the card, and that of course registers everything that needs to register, and now we have their card on file.
Okay, and just
the cool thing about this vendor, I'll add some stuff, is that it knows when you can put additional information in, like the email address and regular home address, and then it emails the person. Just one example. Not only when the transaction is done, you can say, hey, do you want your receipt to be emailed to you? But the cool feature about that is that it also notifies us and them when the card expires. And
can they update it themselves without having to call you and give that information?
No, they have to call us.
They do have to call you. Because just so you know, as we've been talking right now, Sopum just asked this very question. That's why I brought it up. Like, how does it technically work? And someone just asked on Sopum, so I hear this a lot. Now,
here's the interesting thing that I came across is that when you have a co-payment, it's great. You process it and out. So there needs to be a transaction in order for you to capture the card. You can't just simply swipe it and keep it. So the way that let's say they're coming in for a wellness visit and there's no co-payment. So how do we get the credit card? We charge 1 cent and put the card in for 1 cent. And so in anticipation of parents getting all bent out of shape about it, I just went to the bank and got a whole bunch of pennies, and the staff has them there in the front desk. So if anybody starts complaining, I just hand them their penny.
You should give them a dime. Say you made money today. Because you would gladly pay a dime.
Nobody has asked for their penny. Nobody has asked for their penny. So anyway.
All right. So let me ask you. All right. Well, I was just going to ask a question that got to the end. I want to hear some more about the nitty-gritty. So when you were looking for a vendor, and now that you've had some experience doing this, were there any features in particular that were important to you?
I wanted to be able to do recurring billing. I wanted to be able to set up a payment plan where we didn't have to pull up the card and process it. So we wanted to set up a recurring billing mechanism that was that once we set it up, then we wouldn't have to touch it again until the amount was fulfilled. And of course, storing the card was the main thing. Could you store the card? And those were probably the two main features. And then the other stuff, you were able to, if we already have their card on file, they're easy to search. So you just put in the last name, and their card shows up. we can just ask the patients, hey, would you like for us to put it? I've always wanted to do that. Like when people call in payment, I would like to say, hey, would you like for us to put it on the card that you have on file, as opposed to having to do another transaction or read me the number and then me having to go to the little machine, punch it in, and do all that. Where now we just have all that information already there. So the staff has the portal up and running all the time, and so they flip back and forth. So when anybody calls, if the number is there, then they process it, and if it's the first time that they're paying, which it shouldn't, the number's always there, because if they've been to the office and they've got a balance, we have their card.
Now, when do you use the card? If you get an EOB in and they suddenly owe you $500, do you just nail the card, or do you send them a statement first? How does it work?
This is an important question, because many people have heard me talk about, in fact, just a few days ago, I did a blog post on Mary Pat's program. And Mary Pat's program highly encourage us, all practices, to just ding the card as soon as you get the EOB back, so not even send out a statement. When we started doing this, Chip, this was back in 2009, so if it's something that is kind of scary today, with everybody feeling comfortable with buying, leaving your card on Amazon and iTunes and all this other stuff, and still being kind of apprehensive about giving your doctor a card, imagine what it was like in 2009.
Oh yeah, it was awful.
So what I came up with in order to ease this into it is that we would still send out statements. So so the purpose was really just getting a payment guarantee for those that weren't going to be paying. And there was no easy way of knowing who were the ones that were going to pay and who were the weren't. And to this day, there's really no way of knowing when they come in, because we know that their insurance card is no guarantee of payment. And one thing that I thought was completely ridiculous, that even if you called in to verify eligibility and benefits, they'll tell you right then and there, I'm telling you right now, but I won't know for sure until it is processed, right? So it's like, it seems like a waste of time to me to call when they're still not even going to give you a guarantee that they're going to pay. I just got a letter from one of our favorite payers saying that they paid, and then about 2 months, I think 2 months later, I got this letter, which is now, saying, oh, by the way, they weren't covered at the, retroactively. So we called, right. They were eligible. When we checked it, we saw them, and now the insurance is telling us, oh, by the way, they really weren't eligible when you saw them. So now, here's the take back. So yep. I think that is completely ridiculous, and obviously I needed to do something in order to protect us, because here's the thing. I mean, it's like we're extending credit, but we're not really a credit company, right? And we are terrible yep. at deciphering who's credit worthy. There are companies out there that are specializing in this, especially the credit card company. So I want to transfer the risk to the experts at collecting balances, and we continue doing what we do best, which is treating children. And the best way that I can think about this is putting a credit card on file. So going back to your question, is that we still send out statements. And at the beginning, we told patients that we were going to be sending out up to, if we were unable to collect the balance, and that person had not made an attempt to either pay or put it on a payment plan or make any attempt to sort out the balance, after 90 days, we would put the card through. We've since reduced that 90 days to 60, and we're going to be making some other changes here really quick. But we still put in place our collection efforts. So if somebody, like for example, if there's a $500 bit, usually we sort it from highest to lowest, and then we have, of course, our buckets. We have our 30-day, we have our 60, blah, 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 right? So yep. We sort it out, the highest to the top and then the lowest to the bottom. So if we have a patient that has an $800 balance, within the 30-day bucket, I'm not going to wait until the 90 days to process their card, because 9 out of 10 times, it's a newborn that the parents haven't called in, or it's a high deductible. Well, back then it was a newborn that the parents haven't called in to add them to the plan. Nowadays, of course, depending on the time of the year, might be a deductible or something like that. So we are proactive about that balance. We'll go and we'll call that patient and say, hey, can I answer some questions? It looks like your insurance company is not paying, or went to deductible. What's going on? Do you want to go ahead and set up a payment plan now? Like, we try to be proactive in that sense.
Right.
And depending on where they're at, I'm not going to go through the whole protocol, but depending on where they're at, then we send out a letter. Sometimes we send out, we call them again. We don't tell them that we're going to do all this because obviously people are going to say, oh, Brandon's going to call me 3 times before he's going to put the card through, so I'm going to wait until the 3rd card before I call him back. So we don't necessarily tell them that, but now simply we make the effort and to make a reasonable, if it's the balance is a decent, we're not going to be calling for the $10 and the $15 ones, but now we do process the card at the 60-day mark, and I think that how that is not I can't. Nobody has been able to argue that is unreasonable.
Have you had people try to argue that?
They don't argue. Well, yes, of course they do. But they haven't been able to, I don't think, win the argument. They argue before giving the card, why is this necessary? I always pay my bills, and of course we got that more when we first implemented this policy. I always pay my bill. Why do I have to do that? Are you they think that it's some sort of a single. I'm singled them in out. I'm offending them. That it's only them that I'm doing it to. And then the ones that also get really upset are the ones that we've made every effort and they have never called us back, haven't responded to our letters, and they call the next day that we process the card. Right. Almost to immediately, the card goes through and we get a call from that person. And then they ask us, why are you doing it? I never got a statement. And I'm like, well, we called you. I got documentation here that we called you. Well, that number doesn't work. And I'm like, well, hey, what am I supposed to do?
Right. And you know what? If you always pay your bill, then you'll never see me bill your credit card.
And that's exactly what I tell people. They're like, well, I always pay my bill. And I said, perfect. Then we will never have to use this card again.
Or now,
or ever.
In your office, do these questions end up in your lap most of the time, or does your staff know how to answer this stuff now?
So I didn't just turn on the switch, and here's the thing that also people get nervous about, that they think, oh, we're in February, March 1st, we're going to do this. I lobbied hard my staff members, explaining to them why this was a good idea. They knew that the storm was going to come. So there was training, and not like formalized training, just a lot of hey, this is going to happen, this is why it needs to happen. So they had to buy into the idea, because if it was we require you to leave a card on file, the patients are going to eat them up, right? So they had to be very confident in how they asked. This is very important. How you frame how they're standing and how they're the position and how they're confident in what they're saying will determine on how aggressive the patient is going to be towards them. And that's number one. Second, it took us a long time to come to that conclusion to put the card, so it wasn't I didn't make that decision in haste. Third, I sent out a letter to parents explaining that this was coming and why we were doing it. That letter is on my website. You can find it. People always ask for it. Just go there, look for it. It's there. And we sent out that letter 6 months, Chip, 6 months prior to us implementing our. So I said, listen, I know this is unconventional. I know that it's unheard of. But the truth of the matter is that in other businesses, this isn't an issue. Right. And we're not raising prices. We're not asking you to pay up front. All we're asking is that if we are unable to collect what is due to us within a reasonable time frame, we have no other choice but to process your card. And if you still don't like that, you have plenty of places to go to. There's plenty of doctors' offices that don't do this. So, so we sent out letters. We handed that letter out to every single patient that checked in, and we also included it in our statements. All right, we folded it into our statement. Of course, we revised our policy, and of course, it was on our website. So, because inevitably we got people telling us, I had no idea that this policy was in place.
Yeah, of course, they all say.
So I'm like, well, listen, how else would have liked for us to notify you? And I'll be more than happy to include that in next time. Here's all that we did.
I'll staple it to your credit card receipt.
Exactly. So I eased into it. It's basically what the answer to that question is, that I eased into it. Now, we are going to get a little bit more aggressive with that in changing things, but we still get people that complain beforehand. But as soon as we tell them we will not see them, the card magically appears.
Right.
People tell me, I don't have a card. I'm like, well, great, then that means that you are used to paying things in cash, so we'll go ahead and do it right now in cash. if somebody tells them that they're not eligible or they're not credit worthy of having a credit card, that is a flag right there. Why would you want to give any type of service to that patient, no matter what? Especially if they're new.
How many of those patients? How many people really don't have a credit card? Do you have a sense?
I mean, it also goes on a debit. I mean, we can do a debit card as well.
Of course.
And it's not we deny service. We're like, okay, well then we'll treat you as a self-pay. And then you can submit to your insurance company your thing. I mean, it's part of our policy, and we're not denying care. We're just like, hey, we want to get paid for our thing. And you are in essence asking us to finance your health care, and we're not even that great at insurance. And you're already, I don't say this, but they are already telling me that they are not credit worthy.
Right. So what was the impact ultimately? What did this do to your collections?
Chip, the best decision we have ever made.
Well, second best.
Second best. What? This podcast is number one.
Oh, number two. Anyway, so it had a big positive impact.
It's first because that decision that you're saying that came way after. So that's the second best. This is
okay. All right.
So I mean, what can I say? Our accounts receivables look beautiful, 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 beautiful. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but we, in terms of they're beautiful. Let me just say that, I mean, I don't think there's nobody out there in terms of patient responsibilities, not insurance. Patient responsibilities, I would be very, very skeptical of somebody that says it has a better accounts receivables than us as far as patients is concerned.
That's a pretty courageous claim.
Absolutely, and I'll stand behind it, and I'll show my numbers to anybody that can come here. And the ones that I do have, that we do have in the 90 and the 120 day bucket. Well, he does this a little bit better because I can exclude the people that are on payment plans. My other system, there was no way to tell the software that they were on a payment plan, so they still showed up in your accounts receivables. But the ones that are there, all on a payment plan. And so I have a far, they say that the closer it gets to the 120, the less chances you are of collecting. That's not true with us because, some people fall through the cracks. Credit cards expired, and then we never see them ever again, or they're erased from the face of the earth. But I guarantee you that we have a far better collection rate on our 90 to 120 days because we have a card on file, and that card gets processed every month. And if it gets declined, we get an email. The patient gets an email, and we call that person right then and there and tell them, hey, your card just declined, and they get an email too. So it's not like they don't know that the card declined. And so those balances are going to be collected. At least I got a better chance. I can't say they're going to be collected 100%, but I have a pretty good idea.
You've got a leg up on it.
I got a leg up on it. So yeah, I mean, it's just been. And as far as people always ask me also about the patients. How was the patients? Of course, it was a battle. I'm not going to say it was easy. A lot of the majority of people didn't think twice about it. They threw out their card. I think an important thing to remember is that we deal with a demographic that is younger and younger, that is accustomed to banking online. They buy everything through Amazon. They have their card on iTunes. They have their card on Amazon, and so we need to take advantage of this mentality that this younger demographic doesn't view data breaches as bad and privacy as bad as the previous generation, right? So take advantage.
Grant, I think that's actually, in my mind, the best selling point of this change in a practice, because so many of the fears and obstacles that I hear practices put up to object to this are based on the values of the people running the practice and not the values of the people coming to the practice. They don't care as much as we care.
Yeah.
So I think that's
of course there's always a risk. I mean, we just found out Target has this big, so there's always a risk. But my answer back to, because I always get there's one particular doctor that always tell me, what if the parent complains to the credit card and then backtracks the charge? That has happened about 3 times since 2009 with us. And what do? We show them the patient's signature, telling us that if we, it says,
Yep.
I'm unable to, if I do not respond to to Salute Pediatrics inquiries regarding my balance that I agreed to under they are allowed to charge my credit card. So we send that. We send their policy. We also give them a summary of how many phone calls we made, how many letters we sent out, and how many statements we sent out. We send all that stuff, and we never hear back from the merchant company. Again,
of course not. And it's not like the patients can't do that if you don't have their thing on file.
Right,
They can sign the thing with you, turn around, and make the call from the parking lot. I've seen it happen.
So there's always a risk, but I say there's also a risk with giving immunizations, right? I mean, it's not 100%. Yet
it's not 100%. If it were 100%
immunizations.
Right. If everything were 100% risk-free, we would never discuss it.
Right. So yeah, there are going to be, but the benefits certainly outweigh the cons, just like the benefits of vaccines surely outweigh. Yeah, it's not 100%. I mean, it's not 100%. So
let me ask you, key question: how many families did you lose because of this policy?
Well, Chip, I actually documented that.
I know.
I don't remember what the number was, but it was like between 3 and 5. Well, it's been a long time. I think it was between 3 or I think it was, let's just say 5 patients, or families, I should say, not patients, families. That and here's why I say 3 to 5. 5 patients that I know of left because they made a big stink about it. Now, if there was people that left and never told us and never requested the records, I don't know.
Right.
I say 3. Listen, I say 3 because 2 of them came back.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. How many of them came back? 2 of the
families came back. So I lost 3 families. Let's say an average of two patients a family, so 6 patients that I lost. A good portion of it complained, but they still gave us the card, and like 85% of them had no problems whatsoever, and they were like, "Yep, here it is."
Now, for the people who complained initially, who whined about it but jumped on, do they continue to complain today?
No, the only ones that complain. Well, it's funny because people forget.
Right.
We actually did that. So when the next year comes, and we ask for we do everything again because we need to get updates and all this other stuff, and we see that the card is about to expire within a few months, and we bring it up. They're like, "What? What in the world is this?" And whoever come up with this, and we're like, "Man, last year you did it. Here's the thing for." Oh, okay. So it's like they forget that they did this last year, or like the dad did it last time, and then this time the mom comes, and the mom has no idea that, so that happens. And then new patients, we're like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe you're doing this, and we're like, yeah. Now I want to say about if they don't have a card, we don't see them. But it takes about a year before everybody cycles through, right? So we're pediatricians, right? So if a kid is coming in and he's sick and he can't breathe and he's wheezing, blah blah, of course we're going to see them. We're not going to, reject. But if I've already told them once, and I already sent them a letter, and I spoke to them personally, and they're coming in for a wellness visit, a month later, and they don't want to give me the card, we're not going to see them. We simply are not going to see them.
Right. So, what's been your biggest surprise about this? Like, did anything catch you off guard that was either a lot better or a lot worse or just really interesting about this process?
The surprise was that I didn't get as much pushback as I thought that I was. The vast majority of patients had absolutely no problem with it. But as we all know, it only takes, the minority makes it seem like it's bigger than what it really is. But when we sat down and of course, everybody was scared to death. I was scared to death, and my staff was scared to death. And like, parents are complaining, and they're like coming up a storm. Okay, wait, let's see. So we saw, X number of patients today. Tell me how many complain. Well, this family and this family. Okay, so out of the 60 patients or whatever, 50 patients that we saw today, these 2 okay, well then it's a success. And then the next day, oh my God, people have been yapping and telling us how this is ridiculous and da-da-da-da. We hear it in the front, we hear it in the back. I'm like, okay, so did we see them? Yes. Did they make another appointment? Yes, they did. So, okay. So then it's not a problem. Yeah, just listen to them. I'm sorry. By the way, the doctors, of course, were on board, and because they went back and started complaining to the doctors about it. Do you know that your staff is asking for your credit card up front? And the doctors, absolutely, we're having to do this because if I don't make any money, I am unable to continue providing services for you. So it's my responsibility to make sure that I still have a salary and I can pay my staff so you have a place to come. Now, they wouldn't be as sarcastic.
That's a good, important, vital point that I want everyone listening to hear. The only way that a plan like this will ever work is if all of the doctors are on board. If you have one doctor undermining the process, the whole ship will sink. So if you have one guy, when the mom comes to the back and she tells him some sob story, she whines, and the doctor comes out and goes, "Don't take hers," don't even bother. No, honestly, don't even bother. So your doctor's on board is like a key. That's true of almost anything that we would talk about, but that's a good one. Anytime you're talking about the money, the doctors have to back up the staff every time. So I'm glad you did that.
Well, of course, I did mention that the staff had to be on board as well, because how they sell it or how they present it is really important. And if they don't stand up to the patients, they're going to eat them alive. And then, of course, the doctors have to be. And the doctors were, of course, my number one doc was like, no problem. It was already well discussed. But some of the employee doctors were like, I don't know. But I'm like, we're going to do it. And this is what I did. I said, okay, this is how many patients we see. And I said, okay, what happens if 10% of them walk out or 20% of them walk out? How would that impact us? And I just ran some numbers. And I said, okay, well, how would that represent in our day? So if we see X number of patients, if 20% don't show up, now we have so I said this is an upside because we got rid of the ones that weren't going to probably pay us in the first place.
Wait. I want to make sure. Are you applying some math and science to this process and not just basing it on how you feel? Because I had to calculate, Chip. I had to calculate what would be my worst case scenario, and I had to give some sort of, idea. If you start doing things like that, I'm out of business. I'm employed by people who don't use common sense. So cut that out. Anyway, so that's great. I love doing that.
The check for this, for what I'm just about to tell them. So I figured 80% or 20%. I did several calculations, and I say let's just keep numbers simple. We see 100 patients a day, that's not the truth, but let's say. And I said, okay, that's a lot of patients, but let's go say that only 20 are not going to show up now. Only 80 are going to show up. Well, these are the people, as it turns out, that after the 80%, we're going to get paid 100% of that 80%, first of all.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
Second of all, these are the people that absolutely value us, all right? These are the people that love us. These are the people that will, go up a mountain on their knees for us, all right? And who do I want? That guy or the guy that, that thinks that that I'm taking advantage of them. And then now we can offer far better service because instead of jamming 30 patients a day, now we're seeing 25 or 20. And then on the back end, these 80% who are, by the way, the best sales force I could possibly have, now are going to go tell their friends on all the time and dedication that this practice has, on listening to all my questions, and I get them answered, and I don't feel rushed, and da-da-da-da. So yeah, I mean, the assumption is that 20%, the assumption is if that, let's go say 20% or 10% walks away, that somehow you lost 10% of your business. Well, that's not a good assumption because that 10% wasn't going to pay you anyhow, but you were still doing the work for it. Am I making sense here, or is this?
And that sounds a lot like one of the arguments I make about dropping an insurance plan.
Exactly.
People feel like all your visit volume is not created equally.
Basically, I'm working less and getting paid the same. I can make that argument. I'm working the same. I'm working less and getting paid the same.
Right, and so I'm a big fan of that. The people you're losing are people you just as soon see go to the clinic down the street. They're not, and I'm going to add, it's not simply that these aren't it's not only that these are the people who aren't going to be paying you and so on. These are the people who don't respect your time. These are the people who don't respect your clinical advice. The people you've bonded well with, they don't care about giving you a credit card number.
Well, that's exactly another point. It's like if you have an issue with giving us your credit card, but you don't have an issue with us treating your most precious, valuable thing in your life, which is your children, then to me that's a red flag as well.
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, I don't know what staff you have here, And I'm like, do you eat at restaurants? Do you know the guy that you just handed a credit card and disappears for 20 minutes with your credit card? You don't have a relationship with him. You at least know my front desk for the last 10 years. They've all been here for the last 10 years. So, what's up with that?
Yeah. People are funny.
And here's another. I keep on coming up with another thing. People get very, scared of the fact that we have a credit card on file for people, right? But here's the thing: in terms of identity theft, the credit card is good. You can do some damage with a credit card, but there's all kinds of protections now that credit cards have that that protect the consumer from some sort of a fraud and things like that. Guess what? There is no protection for first name, last name, social security number, address, which, by the way, are all things that we've stored for since the dawn of insurance companies. Since the day that we started taking insurance company and we stopped taking money directly from patients. So, as somebody that really wants to do harm, what is the gift that keeps on giving? A credit card that's going to be canceled as the moment somebody puts an unauthorized charge on it, or an address, a social security number, where you live, where you work, how many kids you have, where your kids go to school. I mean, the information that we already have on patients is, if anybody wants to do harm, I mean, it's there. It's there.
And they never worried about it before.
Bigger problems. Nobody had an issue with storing everybody's social security number, and all of a sudden people have an issue with storing their credit cards. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yep, I agree with you. All right.
I mean, you still take the precautions. It's not like I leave the credit card. I mean, instead of us taking the credit card, we have a company that specializes in making sure that their PCI.
It's not written down on a piece of paper in a drawer, which I have seen people do.
Yeah, I've seen people have a locked cabinet and with a notebook, and I've heard that before too.
I don't advocate that process.
Well, I mean, I don't advocate it either, but at the same time, they have. I mean, their charts are not locked up either, and the patient's demographic is there. So if anybody wanted to sit there and make copies of everybody's demographic, and nowadays the social, I think people have wised up, but not too long ago, your social was on your insurance card.
Yeah, that was, here at PCC years ago, because we are nerds and we fight this stuff, when Vermont Blue Cross came in and said, okay, and we're going to use your social security number as your ID. And we said, no, we want the ability to opt out of that. We do not want our social security number printed on our ID. And they said, oh, yes, you have to do that. And we said, oh, no, in fact, it's against the law for you to do that, which is true. And this went around in circles, and finally, after a while, and they said, of course, what do they say? You're the only people who've ever asked for this. No one ever does. So we fight and we fight and we fight. They say, okay, you can make. They said, you can make up a number. So a couple of us made up numbers, but I'm not joking. They sent me my insurance card, and it had my social security number on it. Really? I never gave it to them.
Yeah,
there it was.
They had it. They had it all along.
And I took my tinfoil hat off, and I had a headache the rest of the day because those waves were coming right through from the satellites. But there you go. That's why I always tell people, hey, how is it that the moment you get that positive pregnancy test at the OB's office, that the diaper stuff and the formula stuff starts showing up at your house?
Yeah.
Your doctor isn't selling that information.
Well, in my marketing talk, I talk about data and how important data, to mine the data to find out how to. And I talk about, I heard this, I don't know if it was like NPR or what's that show that you like to listen to? This American Life.
This American Life.
That Target knows when a woman is pregnant before she's told some of her key family members.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Shopping patterns. And one of the things that they did is they started immediately sending out coupons for diapers, and it creeped the moms out. So what they did is that they'll still send out the diaper ad, but next to it there'll be like a tire sale or Pennzoil oil just to so they don't the mom doesn't get creeped out.
Well, I don't know if you saw it, but Amazon has just started. This sounds like a joke, but it's true. They've started a pre-shipping program. They know in advance when certain people are going to order stuff. They just deliver it to you before you order it.
Yeah.
So
That's
I'm
like
gonna start ordering
the
random
pharmacy
things.
sometimes already, he puts it on a thing, and then they know when your medicine is due, and they're like, it's ready, come pick it up. And I'm like, I'm not even done with the one that I have.
I haven't been taking this stuff regularly like I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
All right.
Really quick, I want to mention a few things.
Please, go for
I think that Mary Pat Wiley, if you go to managemypractice.com, she's been a guest on this show, on this program. Look at me sounding all official on this program.
Yeah.
The reason why I love Mary Pat's seminar is because she offers a beautiful, beautiful way to do this. What's the right word? Schematically or in order, not kind of like I just described. It has all the resources. She gives you how to even negotiate with the merchants. What to look for. What are some of the fees that are hidden on the merchants when you're going to go look for an online merchant to process your card. She gives you templates. She gives you letters to how you are going to send to notify the patient. How to train your staff with responses with the most common questions that people are going to ask. And she gives you all this in a beautiful workbook by just attending.
You're saying if someone's interested in this, they go to your blog, Pediatric Inc.
Well, I have a post where she does it. She does a monthly seminar, and they can go to my blog or they can go to managemypractice.com where they see the schedule. She just had one like yesterday, I believe. So February is done. Sign up for March. It is like I think it's $80 or $70, but goodness, I mean.
Yeah, nothing.
I mean, it's nothing.
Go read your blog, read what you said about it, then go to Mary Pat's site, managemypractice.com, and sign up for the next seminar.
People get all bent out of shape. It's like, well, Mary Pat says that not to send out a statement, and I don't think we can do that. Mary Pat lays out the foundation. Feel free. I told this just the other day. I talked to somebody. I'm like, look, this is how we do it. We send out several statements still. We're pediatrics. We're different. You can take the best from what I've described if you want, or throw it out the window. Take the best of what Mary Pat does, and come up with your own thing that you guys feel comfortable with. So you don't have to do it exactly like Mary Pat does, and you certainly don't have to do it the way that I do it. So, that's kind of my final thought. But actually, I have another final thought: is do it. You have to do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. There is no question. There's nothing out there that you can say why you should not do that. I'm going to tell you, deductibles are going to continue to go up higher. People are going to be more responsible. It's already down there. They are shifting the responsibility of the collecting to us. It's a predetermined. They're working less and they're asking us to less. We are not capable. Well, capable is not the word. We are not set up to be medical collectors, right? We are medical providers. And the only way we can remove the medical collecting portion of it is by shifting the same way that the insurance company have shifted the risk to us. We have to shift the risk to somebody that is actually good at this sort of thing, who makes this their business. And the faster you do that, the much better you will do.
Right. Doing nothing is.
Doctor doesn't do anybody any good. And one of the biggest leaks that the doctor has is, you've talked about this, Chip, they lose money in the exam room, not with the insurance company. That's one place where they lose their money. And in the other, I would argue, there's several, but I would argue the other one is with their accounts receivable. That's where the other leak comes of revenue.
All right. And so, and the bottom line is, doing nothing is not going to improve anything. That's just I guarantee that. If you do nothing to change or improve, you're not going to go anywhere.
Something is better than nothing.
All right. So on that pleasant note, we will call it a game today, and we will be back soon. We'll publicize our next couple events. We had some viewers today, Brandon, believe it or not.
Yeah, how many?
I'm sorry?
How many?
2.
Oh,
so that was
last time we had 1.
Yeah. So, and that's with again me doing the goofy Google invite. But we're going to tell everyone. We'll tell the world, and it'd be cool to have some people show up. And I really would love it if you and I discuss something, and then I could hit a button over here and pull some people into it.
We have already set the dates for our next 2 because we finally got around to doing that. So now it'll be easier because now we have the 2 dates that we're gonna, which is coming up. I mean, we're gonna do a few of them not too far apart. So we can do that, and then have people join us and participate. I think up to 10 people can like participate at the same time. But as far as watchers, if you will, or listeners, I mean, it's endless. I mean, it's like infinite almost. Many people can jump on here. They just can't.
Ideally, I'd like to turn people's cameras on without telling them, so we can. So
they're like somebody picking their nose.
Yeah, exactly. Oops.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Brandon, thank you as always. I appreciate it, and we will be back soon.
Something. So when are you going to implement a credit card program?
Me?
Your practice. Oh, that's right. You just find solutions. I forgot.
I have the hard work.
I just tell people what to do. And I have yet to figure out what you're solving.
Brandon, you actually know PCC has everyone's credit card number or ACH number. We don't send bills. Period. We've been doing that for years. It's the best thing ever. And you know what? Here's another thing. You know what you should tell your patients who object? Say you should go get a credit card with miles and put all this on miles. We have clients who every year pay their entire balance on a credit card, and and between PCC and their immunizations, they've got flights galore. Oh, we have people who love that. So, all right.
Take advantage of those points like that. But yeah, that is attractive. I might be making a call and switching it over to.
Our viewers left.
One of the points. All
right, Brandon. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
Chip, it was always a pleasure.
All right.